Right. So now
Yay.
turn that same, okay. This is the fun part of this is the, I'm going to edit this out part, right? Um, all right. So yeah, just so everybody's aware, we are recording. So if you don't want your faces on our YouTube channel, then I don't know, go ahead and turn off your camera. Let's see, where am I? All right, we'll get started then. So welcome everybody to Bodies and Being, the Pre-Modern Body Project. We are basically a collective of scholars we're from many, many different disciplines, history, literature, all the things. And we basically share a love of pre-modern corporeality, pre-modern bodies, material culture, things like that, that kind of get left out in some of the historical discourse in favor of ideas and kind of more nebulous things, which are also wonderful. But we're very interested in the body. So I was particularly interested about talking to Kristi DiClemente, who's our speaker today, because she is going to talk to us about needlework as well as her own research into bodies. And both of those are very embodied things. So that's great. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Kristi. Kristi DiClemente is a medieval historian and associate professor at a small university in rural Mississippi in the US. She started doing freehand embroidery in 2019 because she was desperate to make things with her hands, and it took off from there. In 2020, she started a YouTube channel where she talks about her stitching, crafting, and life, and soon added cross stitch to her repertoire. Her highest goal is to live in a house with a tower with her husband and her dog, make art, teach students about the past, travel, and be joyful. All fantastic goals. So, yeah, welcome, Kristi.
Thank
I'm just
you.
away.
Thank you. Yeah, so I guess I just want to talk about I'm a self-taught embroiderer, and I started in the summer of 2019 because I was playing this like video game where I was like building a city or something, and I would like sit down, and then 8 hours later I'd be like standing up, and I didn't feel like any time had passed, and I thought I can't do this anymore. I have to find something else to do. And so I went to my local Michael's craft store and and they had origami paper on sale and they had embroidery supplies on sale, and I got both. And I'm like, well, I'll just start with embroidery and we'll see how it goes. And the rest is history. And it sort of consumed my life. And I still have that origami paper. So, yeah, I kind of chanced into this kind of art form. I've shown my embroidery at local galleries. I did sort of some landscapes and stuff. But my main goal was to someday embroider the entire Bayou Tapestry. So that's on
Oh.
my bucket list. So this is my favorite part of the Bayou Tapestry. Um, here's the back of it. So I just wanted to let you know that like I do a lot of kinds of medieval embroidery, needlework, cross stitch. But what I'm going to talk about today are my some of my cross stitch patterns that I have and their relationship to medieval marginalia and monstrous bodies. So let me share my screen. I have a PowerPoint. This is going to be super casual. I'm not. I don't have like a paper. We're just going to kind of look at some fun pictures and talk about some fun ideas, I think. And we'll get started. All right, I'm gonna minimize you all. There we go. So I'm calling this monstrous marginalia. I love medieval marginalia. I'm wearing my medieval marginalia t-shirt today in honor of this talk. And so I kind of just want to talk through like the marginalia that I use in my patterns, and it's going to kind of morph into a discussion of monstrous bodies in the margins of maps and the medieval imagination. So that's the meandering path we're going to go on today. Some important terms I want to talk about. I don't want to assume that anyone knows about these things, but if you do, I apologize. So marginalia is the Latin word for quote things in the margin. And it usually refers to decorations or writings that don't connect with the text. So they're not like illustrating a part of the text. They're just kind of the random and sometimes not so random art text doodles that are on the margin of the text. So these folks here would be marginalia, but usually letters are not marginalia. And then we're also going to talk about monstrous races. And these are semi human creatures who are related to humans, but they have distinctive characteristics. We'll talk about what those are. And they were believed to live on the edges of the known world. So, often in India, often in the far north, often in sub-Saharan Africa, these sort of semi-human creatures. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. But first, oh, yes. And so these are some, sorry, I forgot what I put here. These are some monstrous races. These are the Blemmy, and they're like my favorite monstrous race. They have their face on their chest and they have no heads. And this is from the document that I have here. And then there's sort of a sketch from the Hereford Mappamundi, which we'll talk about later. All right, so let's talk marginalia, and this is kind of connecting with my patterns, which just honestly make me laugh, which is why I do them. So my first one that I did was the nun harvesting phalluses, is what I call it, and this is all over the internet. This particular picture, and it is one of a series of marginalia in a 14th century version of the Roman de la Rose and the Romance of the Rose. And so this book is essentially an allegorical poem from the 12th, 13th century about a lover who is seeking their loved one, who is a rose, and at the end he plucks the rose, and it sort of scholars think of it as a rape allegory. And this is the book that set Christine de Pizan to writing the Book of the City of Ladies, because this sort of question of women and like what their purpose was and how useful they were, she's sort of responding to that. I apologize. I'm like 4 blocks from a train that is passing by. So I apologize if you can hear that. And this version was copied by a Parisian studio run by a husband and wife duo, Richard and Jean de Montbassin. But she was the one who was registered as the artist, and this was possibly done after her husband died. So scholars are pretty sure that she's the one who put this in the text. And I said that it's a series, so I just want to show you this series. It's pretty amazing and scandalous. Let's make sure you can see what I'm trying to make you see. You can't. Hold on. I have to rethink my sharing. We'll share this screen. There we go. Okay, so this is the I thought I had pulled it up, but it is, I think, one. Was this it? No. I'm sorry, y'all. I thought that the link would go straight to it. Either way, so um, this comes from a series of images where you start off with a nun leading a monk on a rope, like a leash that's attached to his penis. And it ends with them having sex. So it's sort of this like series of um, images that that are very racy, don't go with the story, and are hugely popular. So this is the stitched version that I have, and I'll show you. And I have it right next to me. I can show you when I'm sort of done with this part of the discussion. And this was my first marginalia pattern that I did. And honestly, it's my best-selling pattern, and it's hilarious, right? Like people find it absolutely hilarious. And the thing that I love about this is that it shows people that like medieval people were just people and they also liked a dick joke, honestly. Like that's kind of the reason why people love this so much. And it is by far my best-selling pattern. And then we have the fart jokes. So this guy is at the bottom of the Speculum Historiale by Vincent of Beauvais, who was an encyclopedist. And this book is a history of the world from creation to Vincent's time. So it's like nothing to do, obviously, with butt trumpets. And the very interesting thing about butt trumpets is that you kind of find them in a lot of marginalia. First, I mean, I just think that medieval people enjoyed fart jokes. And so they're all over the place. If you search online, what's really interesting, I think, is that when you search online, you'll see a lot of butt trumpets that have been photoshopped into marginalia that was like scat based, that was like poop joke based. So they like replaced poop jokes with fart jokes, like whoever is editing this. And it's really interesting. I think that interaction with this marginalia tells us something about like us too. Um, and so other marginalia include a very realistic bird up here. You have an initial here with a bedridden king, probably Charlemagne, because this is kind of Charlemagne's area. So this wouldn't be considered marginalia, obviously. And then down here you have like a monstrous hybrid creature with long legs and a human face. So I just find this sort of, again, I just think it's funny because I am basically like a 12-year-old when it comes to like medieval humor. And I also find it interesting that these images are in very serious text, like the juxtaposition of the very serious history of the world text and a guy using a trumpet with his butt just delight me, honestly. And so here is my stitched version. And you know, I edited a couple things, but I feel like I got the essence there. And then this one is like the only non-humanoid, and I think it was just because I appreciate the vulgarity of it. Again, I'm like a 12-year-old. So this is in a book of hours, the Hours of Charlotte of Savoy. And um, a book of hours is a religious text, and it includes prayers, canonical hours, and this particular page is from the Mass for the Virgin Mary, right? So in this page with this Mass, there is a cat licking its butt, and it's this sort of fantastically decorated book and page, and so you have up here a naked boy with a bow and arrow. Here we have, I think it's a fox holding a goose or another kind of fowl. Um, and I just love the idea. Again, I just love the juxtaposition of this. And this is not the only cat licking its butt that you can find. So this is from a breviary, I mean, a bestiary. Here we have in the margins another cat. And so this is kind of a very, no, I wouldn't say common image, but monks love their cats, I think, as much as stitchers love cats. And I have learned that stitchers really love cats. I personally am a dog person, but I do respect the love of cats that stitchers have, and also the love of cats that the monks who are drawing these things also have. And I did change the image a little bit, and this is a mock-up of it. I have not taken pictures of the actual finished product, but I changed the coloring around, and I changed the background. The background in my version actually comes from the really famous image of Geoffrey Chaucer. And the reason I did that is because I'm trying to make a cohesive collection of rude medieval marginalia cross stitch patterns. So if someone wanted to stitch them all, and some people are, they would all match together. So they all have the same color scheme. And then I also kind of liked that this kind of gold stuff here looked like hairballs. Like the cat had like corked up some hairballs, and that also just makes me laugh. Mostly, this is about finding things that delight me. That's kind of my whole MO. Um, and with those three, those are my first three patterns that I made. And I kind of scoured the internet and the manuscripts for these various images. But after those, my trajectory kind of changed. Um, okay, sorry, I'm just seeing that there's comments. I just want to make sure. Okay, just want to make sure I'm not missing any comments. Oops, what am I doing? Okay, so what I realized is that when I started looking for images, marginalia after the cat, I realized what I was looking at, what I was more drawn to and attracted to were monstrous races. And this really ties into the work that I do. And I was talking about this before we started, but the Hereford Mappamundi, along with the Bayeux Tapestry, are probably those two are probably my absolute favorite medieval artifacts. I got to see the Mappamundi last year. I was so excited. It was like bucket list. I think I cried a little bit, honestly. And you'll find monstrous races depicted in these sort of world maps, in these Mappamundi. This one in particular is the largest known extant Mappamundi. It's from around 1300. It's one of my favorite things to teach. I actually did an entire class. I created an entire class on medieval travel because I wanted my students to have to look at this map for a good period of time. It's called a TO map. I don't know if everyone knows what this is, but basically it's east is up. So this here is the Mediterranean. And then this here is the Adriatic. So this is Greece. This is Italy here. This little triangle here is Sicily. We have the Red Sea, which is red. We have the Nile River. We have Eden over here. And then there's Jesus at the top. So, and then this here is England and Ireland. So that's kind of how this is oriented. This is Africa here. So Asia at the top, Africa's on the right, and Europe is on the left. But if you go to their website when it loads, you can actually explore the map. It's loading. There we go. So okay, so if you explore the map, you can see on the exterior there are these kind of dots. So if you go over here, you can look at the quote unquote strange peoples of the world. So here we have the Blemmies, who are the people that I showed you at the beginning with the head on their chest. We have the Sciapods, who have one giant foot that they put over their head in order to block the light and the rain. We have troglodytes, who are cave dwellers, right? But what you'll notice is all these people are on the edges. They're on the edges of the maps. And then over here we have the cynocephaly, who are the dog-headed peoples. And so this map was centered on Jerusalem, and then it sort of went out from there. So I love these depictions, but we have artistic depictions in other places too. So in religious buildings, in this bishop's seat, late 15th century, we have a Blemmy. Here we have a Sciapod in early 11th century priory. We have the Cyclops, which of course is another monstrous body on a 12th century church. And we have the Cynocephaly in from 1130. So medieval people were seeing depictions of these monstrous races kind of all over the place. Most of them would not have had access, obviously, to these giant maps, but they would have had access to these religious buildings. And the fact that they're kind of on display, I think, is really interesting. We also have text descriptions. There's going to be a block of text that pops up. Don't panic. I'm not going to read the whole thing. But this is from the City of God, St. Augustine's City of God. And the question it asks is, are the monstrous races human? Which is a really important question when you're trying to figure out if they have a soul, right? Can they be saved? Um, can you convert them when you meet them, et cetera, et cetera? And so he talks about these monstrous races. He talks about um, some have an eye in the middle of their forehead. Some have no mouth, breathe through their nostrils. Some have one leg, right? The sciapods, the cynocephaly, right? So all these people that were depicted in the maps in all the churches are also found in the theological works. Isidore of Seville, who was a 7th century bishop and encyclopedist who wrote etymologies, which is a foundational text of medieval knowledge. He talks about various other races in the same way that St. Augustine did. And then in the travel narratives, Giovanni da Plano Carpini, he was a Franciscan who was sent to talk to the Mongols in the 13th century by the Pope, and he hears about the sciapods who are, can't bend their leg. Marco Polo talks about the dog-headed creatures. And the funny thing about these travel narratives is that when they're sort of talking to people and people are like, oh yeah, there are dog-headed people, they're always like in the next valley, right? Oh yeah, they're totally in the next valley. And my assumption is that the people they were talking to were just having it on with these, Europeans who didn't know anything about anything in that part of the world, and that it was kind of this huge joke that they were perpetrating on these travelers, and then they get kind of written into the worldview of medieval people, and I kind of love that, honestly. So then we have this mashup, right? We have the monstrous races and the marginalia that I'm enjoying stitching. And my first one, I call her a lady with a secret. And so I really love the kind of 19th century way of naming things, like naming books, where it is like a short name and then it's or and then a slightly longer name. So her full name, the full name of this pattern is A Lady with a Secret, or guess what, dot dot dot. Because the joke, I don't know if this is just I'm from New Jersey, near New York, and so if you say guess what, you say chicken butt. And so this is sort of a joke, a play on words in my brain. So this is A Lady with a Secret. And this lady is in, again, St. Augustine, his Meditations. And this is a 15th century copy. But the amazing thing is that this lady's on the first page with Jesus, right? So you open this book and you see the crucifix, and then you have this weird chicken bottomed lady who is spinning, which of course I also love, along with a monster in the upper corner. You have a guy here with a shield who's fighting a centaur, right? Like it's just so wild that these were the choices, right? That were made. Oh, I don't know if you can see him, but up here we have a guy who's sort of like jumping in, but the back of his left leg is a face, because of course it is. And so I just love the location. Again, this juxtaposition of these creatures, these people, along with these very serious texts. And then this is my stitched version, which I changed a little bit of the color to keep within my normal color scheme. But I really enjoyed stitching her. Well, I think the nun was my favorite stitch, but she was definitely number two. I just really love her, and yeah. And then the way I chose her is I have a Patreon, and I asked my patrons like which of this number of images they wanted me to make into a pattern. And the other options were like this guy who is like a centaur with a person head butt. I don't know, playing a lyre or a lute. I don't know. If there are any musicians, you can feel free to correct me. And then we have this little guy who I think this is the Luttrell Psalter, which again is one of my favorite texts because the images are so good. There's so many sort of monstrous creatures in there. And then this guy who apparently lays eggs. He was I really enjoyed him as well. I thought he was really fun. And then the next one I'm going to do that's sort of half designed is this guy who's carrying water and peeing because medieval people loved a joke, right? A body joke. So the question then is like, why do we care about these things? And I think that's a really good question. I think it's a really good question why we should care about why we should care about these margins, why we should care about these different uh, they're not part of the text, they're just doodles, whatever. And I think we should care because number one, it teaches us about the medieval worldview. We have this idea of where these creatures live in the in the medieval imagination, which tells us how they viewed themselves, how they viewed their religion, their place in the universe, etc. It teaches us about book production and the dissemination of knowledge. These we know who in many cases, we know who made these texts. We know who paid for the text. We know who owned the text, and that can tell us a lot about the the way knowledge was transferred. I'm getting really into book arts lately, and so this idea of the book as an object that can teach us something is has become really important to me. It teaches us that medieval people were just like us, right? And that's something for my students. They think past people were so serious. Like they think that past people had no sense of humor. They didn't have fun. They were just like miserable, like ditch diggers, right? There's this idea that the medieval person was just a stupid peasant or an indoctrinated clergyman or I don't know, a brutish knight or whatever. And so I really like these because it shows students that they were playful. Medieval people were playful and they liked body jokes. And it makes me laugh, right? Because I like body jokes too, and I just think it's really really funny. It just makes me laugh, and so that's kind of where this is all coming from. My goal, like I wrote in my introduction, my goal is to sort of find joy in these things that um, maybe aren't super important, but are just for fun. And I feel like the marginalia is just for fun. So this image here is from the Roman de la Rose, where the nun is from, but I like this one. This is actually in between two nun images. But we have these mer people who are embracing here, and then we have these just sort of normal people who are embracing. And then on the next page, you have a monk and a nun who are embracing. And so there's this sort of lots of embracing happening in this text, and I really like that. So that is my presentation. Um, I'm happy to answer questions, and I'll show you. Let me. Um, well, so these are my socials. I'll give this to you. I have Instagram, which I'm not super great at these days. I've been kind of busy. We did buy the house with the tower on Monday, so we're currently painting. And I have a YouTube channel if you're interested in sort of general cross stitch embroidery crafting, seeing how my craft room is going to turn out, etc. And then also, if you want to buy my patterns, no pressure for real, that's my Etsy shop. And you're welcome to. They're all digital, so they just download immediately. They're all just PDFs. So they download immediately, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Wow. Thank you so much. That was super entertaining and extremely informative all at once. Comment section was very lively. Um, so enjoyable, and thank you so much for bringing this to us. So does anybody have a question or anything that they want to ask? I've got one, but I'll hold off because I get to talk all the time. I don't know if you're reading the comments, but it says here, Kristi, I could listen to you talk for hours. This is true for me as well.
Oh, thanks. I just brought up the comments, so thanks everyone. Oh, and I did want to say for those of you who teach, I do actually have an embroidery unit in my tutor class,
Okay.
and I'd be happy to send this to anyone. So basically, this is
Yes.
a piece of black work that is at the Met, and so I recreated that pattern, and I have a little like to do thing. So if anybody wants this and you want to do sort of a teaching unit using Blackwork, we were talking about it was in my tutor and steward England class. We were talking about how the tutors, Elizabeth in particular, used art and clothing to display her power as they were wont to do. And so my students really enjoyed learning about Blackwork. So feel free to email me. I'm happy to send this. It's just a one-page PDF.
Oh, that's brilliant. That is
Hey,
brilliant.
I have something to share. It doesn't have any, I don't know how well you can see it. It doesn't have any scatological, interesting, dirty stuff, but this is a medieval page, and you can see the the graphics in the margins, and this actually turns around. This is cool. I don't know how well, can you see this?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Can you
hold on.
see
I'm
Yeah.
going to
this?
change my
That's
view.
awesome.
So this is the marginalia in this, which is just one page of a medieval book. I have no idea it's vintage or anything, but um, 50 years ago, um, I was at an art show and things like that, and they were selling bits of this book. So my mother actually bought it for me for a wedding present,
Okay.
Oh
which
wow,
is why
that's
it flips
cool.
around so you can see both sides. It's not in a static frame,
Right.
but that is it is a vintage one. But I do have one question. I look at um, some of the mm, modern TV stuff that I don't watch, but I see the promos for, where they have all these interesting interstellar monsters and things like that. Are these sort of like drawing directly or more indirectly, or is it sort of something we have a memory of in our mind of the medieval monsters that they're plunking into modern day interstellar monsters?
I don't think I can answer that. Unfortunately, I do think that I don't think I can I don't think I know how to answer that question. I think that's sort of out of my wheelhouse, unfortunately. I
Okay.
do love, on sort of on a slightly tangential idea. I also really love manicules and like the different manicules that are in texts. And I love like seeing manicules in the world. I think the use of manicules in the world is kind of in the modern world is kind of amazing. And so I try to take pictures whenever I see them or whatever. So I do think that the modern world has been very influenced by the medieval world in ways that I don't think most people understand.
Hmm.
And so I'm sure that there's some kind of an influence. And what are the monsters? What are like modern monsters? Like modern monsters are um, extraterrestrials. They are uh, like ghosts, right? Like we still have our monstrous bodies. They're just further in the margins, right?
Hmm.
They're like anyway. So that's kind
Hmm.
of what my thoughts on that.
Hmm. Thank you.
Tennille, it looks like you have a question.
Now I have two. My original question, but I also just heard a vocabulary word that I've never heard before. Manicule? What is that?
So a manicule is so manus comes from the Latin word for hand, and it's essentially like the fingers. That's why I was doing finger guns. It's the fingers that are pointing out important parts of
Hmm.
a manuscript. And so essentially, they wouldn't have used arrows because arrows were actually like a thing that people like arrows were a weapon, right? So
Weapons. Yeah.
they didn't use them. They would use fingers, and they also sometimes use penises. I mean, like medieval people were like obsessed with penises. It is hilarious, hilarious.
Okay, that gets
Yes.
more to my
Yeah.
original question as to why I raised my hand. A little bit about my own personal background is definitely coloring my question here. I grew up in a former lifetime Pentecostal, and so this imagery would never have been tolerated in my religious family's house. And so I'm trying to square this in these images being so commonplace, apparently. And I'm guessing in these religious texts and by monks, I get that they had lots of free time and society was different. I'm finding it really difficult to square these things. Can you shed any light on this? I love it. I love that. You are blowing my mind here to this whole new world I didn't know existed. I teach world history, by the way, so
It's
I'm
so
just going to
fun.
be yes, I'm going to be giggling and
Yeah.
going down rabbit holes about this the rest of the day. Thank you.
So the penis tree was actually here, and I'll show you. This is I had to stitch it again because I gave it to a friend of mine. So this is a stitch version of the penis tree, and this is in a secular text. And so we know who drew this. It's in a secular text. The text itself is secular. Um, but there are all these sort of monstrous beings, human animal hybrids in a lot of religious texts. Like I said, my favorite text probably is the Luttrell Psalter, which was finished in like 1329, and it just has sort of all these like hundreds of human animal hybrids. And as far as I know, we don't know why they're there. There are obviously like discussions of it. They could represent sort of demons, right? It's a religious text. They could represent demons, but they don't come off as being evil. They're not doing evil things. They're just kind of living there in the margins, right? They're just sort of hanging out in the margins with the sciapods, with the blemmies, right, in the map. That's just sort of where they live. And the really interesting thing about the Luttrell Psalter is that it's also an amazing source for depictions of daily life in the 14th century, like pre-Black Death 14th century, because it has uh, drawings of farmers, it has drawings of feasts, it has drawings of workers, it has like all these really amazing drawings of just like everyday boring life and these monsters. And so we don't, as far as I know, last time I checked, we don't know why they're there. There are theories, but we don't know why they're there. Um, and it could just be that the monks are sort of thinking about these monstrous bodies. They're in these churches that have depictions of monstrous bodies that are kind of again on the periphery, and so they're including it's part of their worldview. They're including these images in the text that they're drawing. And
Awesome.
they're funny.
Super interesting. Thank you. Thank
Hilarious.
you. Thank you.
I think that like I don't know to add my two cents in as more of like a literary like historian and human animal hybridity is basically like the focus of my thesis, but I primarily focus on Old Norse stuff. I don't know. I think what you were sort of saying about like, well, how can you reconcile this with like, a very religious settlement or a very religious environment and text? Is that, when like so many of these like manuscripts and the depictions within them, like the communities, the religious communities that they're coming from can be so varied and diverse and very much not how we sort of perceive modern religious like devout sort of settings to be and what our imagination of like medieval settings is. I mean, just thinking about like I don't know, some of the people that we know firsthand that have gone into the religious life. Like if you think of the lovers like Abelard and Eloise, Eloise did not want to be in that nunnery. She did not want to be the head nun there. Like she was, having a saucy relationship with Abelard. She's still having that saucy relationship in the refectory, thinking about him while she's in like, services. Lots of these people still had their own kind of, sexuality and their, perceptions of like the world around them that weren't necessarily understood that well. I mean, when we think about like the church reforms that go on at different times throughout the medieval period in different parts of Europe, and beyond, it's often because people go, I'm shocked to see the debauchery going on in these monasteries and these nunneries. By the time you get to the early modern period, you get the famous "get thee to a nunnery" because they were seen as places of sin, rather than salvation. And especially, looking at the textual context for like medieval Iceland, where they kind of very much carved out their own identity of church. Like I study sagas that are written they must be written in ecclesiastical settings because no one else was literate. And yet within the legendary sagas, you've got all sorts of human animal transformation. You've got all sorts of like erotic shenanigans going on of all kinds of taboo. You've got literally human transformation of one woman to look like another woman so that she can have sex with her brother, her twin brother. It's all sorts of crazy taboo stuff. And I think, that's maybe why you get some of this crazy stuff coming up in manuscripts, is because it's not the kind of, universal devotee kind of, clinical sort of setting we might imagine to be there. And what kind of, we said earlier about like why we sort of get the connection between these like OG monsters of the medieval period to, our like supernatural things now. We kind of get that revival of like medieval monsters when you get like romanticism in literature, and then that turns into the Gothic. And so these older time monsters that, were in these maps and manuscripts get revived in later literary traditions. And I feel like Gothic's the precursor to sci-fi fantasy. So it kind of all transmutes from one to the other. But I also have my question to Kristi as well. When you kind of got into all of this and making like, I don't know, like you were saying, I was so interested with the design aspect of it, almost like the way that you'd edited some of them to make them so cohesive. I don't know, do you have like larger plans for where to take these designs and which ones you might include? Like, I don't know, what would be your idea of like the ultimate like collection of these, do you think?
I'm so sorry. I completely lost internet for like 2 minutes. I think I'm back.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
that's okay.
we saw you go away.
Yeah, I mean, I was asking just like
everything disappeared. Sorry can you repeat your question, Francesca? I'm so sorry.
No, that's fine. Where do you see like, because obviously I was saying what I love how like your design elements to them, how you like adapt them to be like that sort of cohesive, gotta collect them all and have them together. I don't know, do you have like any plans or projections or anything that you think you might like, what's your end goal for all of these together?
So I mean, I don't, that's not how I plan necessarily. It's more like, because, I'm department head, I'm teaching, I have a fellow, like I have like so much stuff going on that this is like when I have a moment, I'll do it. And so I actually haven't designed anything in like a year, which is really sad for me. Um, but what I really want to do is I want to go to like medieval, studies conferences and be in the, uh the exhibits hall, right? So like I did my master's degree at Kalamazoo, and so it'd be easy, like I'm friends with the person who runs that exhibit hall, so I'd be like, hey, can I sell my my dick jokes at at Congress, please?
I mean, I love the stall for like, this kind of thing that they have at like Leeds IMC.
Yeah,
Like, it's
immediately
always
thought of
so
Leeds.
fun. So yeah, I feel like you'd fit right in at
Well, and
somewhere like that.
when I've only been to Leeds once, and there was someone who does embroidery patterns, I think, or maybe it's just the hand dyed floss and stuff. But I feel like she
I
had
think it
patterns
can
too.
vary like year to year on who
Mm.
comes, like of the vendors and the stalls. Like get a couple regulars, but yeah, I'm trying to think who's been there the past 2 years that I've been there. But yeah, I feel like, it'd be so much fun. I think, I don't know, from what I know of me and the other scholars of Europe, or maybe waiting to see how things perhaps settle shortly in the US before we next go to Kalamazoo. Would love to.
Yeah, I would hold off on that. But yeah, that's kind of I would love to do that, I think. I do have my my Birdman guy drafted. He just needs to be sort of finalized. And then I think after that, I'm still very interested in that centaur with the face butt. Like
Yes, I would be too.
As
I,
am I.
I'm just very he also sort of delights me, and so I'm hoping that I can get the main issue though is that in some of them they're really detailed, and so they might get really big. So like these I try to keep them below 10,000 stitches, which is sort of a medium. You can kind of comfortably do it in a couple months if you're kind of focused on it. And I feel like the centaur with the face butt would be way more stitches. And she's actually quite a lot of stitches. Um, I think she's slightly above 10,000.
I mean, this is what I'm working with right now. I don't know how many stitches this is so far.
I'm doing the exact same one.
I don't know
Didn't
why
I
the
tell you
camera does the zoom thing, by
Francesca's?
the way, but it's been years.
Yeah, that one has 227,000 stitches. Do you know what
Classic Francesca.
are you doing it? Sorry, we're going to talk cross stitch now. Are you doing it in Pattern Keeper or paper?
I have this. Is this bad?
Oh no, that I could never. I could never.
It's the only way I know how.
Bow
Is there
down
another way?
like doing. Is it a Heaven and Earth design?
It was from Etsy. It's Malinka Art Store.
Okay.
I don't know. I bought it like 3 years ago and been working on it mostly since.
Yeah, I'm doing what Heaven and Earth Design has the whole series.
Okay.
And it has 227,000 stitches, and I'm just about to hit 25% after like 4 years.
Like, so everyone I know is like, so what are you making these days? I'm like, same thing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, James, who's also hangs out with our crew sometimes, Dr. James White here at the University of Alberta, he's an avid cross stitcher, and he's done that one too, Francesca. I think he's done that exact same one.
Yeah,
So
it speaks to us all.
yeah, it does. And like I was gonna say, Kristi, that we have spoken so many times, me and Francesca and James, about the fact that everybody associated with bodies and beings seems to be also in some way associated with needlework and obsessed by it. And that at
We just
some
love
point
to stab things.
we love stabbing. Like I always say, it's my favorite thing, you know, to do with needles other than heroin. But I don't do heroin, so that's just for the record. So anyway, it's we talked about having like a gathering at Leeds one of these days where it's just a bunch of nerdy needleworkers. I'm afraid that it'd be the whole conference though at this point. But that's something to keep in mind if you're ever thinking of traveling over to Leeds.
We
I
never
don't
get
want to
through the airport. How do you get through the airport and security?
trouble. I bring my knitting, I bring my stitching, I go on the plane and I just sit there and I do those. And like I've never had any trouble with that, which is so odd because I've heard, yeah. I don't want to keep everybody too much, and I know there's just so much to say, so many questions, and we're all super excited. And you can always come back at any point if you want to talk to us again. I do have some questions.
Yeah.
Actually, sorry, I'm going to start with just a quick aside to Neil. Did I say your name correctly? Okay, wonderful. Just to quickly add on to what Francesca said, because I'm actually in religious studies technically, even though I'm a historian. And one thing that might help you figure this out a little bit is that the kind of like evangelical theology that is present in like modern day Pentecostalism, things like that, is really quite new in history. It's only been practiced since about the 19th century. It has antecedents, of course, but like, you know, we had all these reformations of morals and different things that happened. But, you know, prior to that in the medieval era, you know, religion and kind of the earthiness of being human, all of it was sort of just jumbled up together. It was just life, right? Once we get confessionalization, which is this term that refers to the idea that we all sort of put ourselves in groups like, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist or I'm an Anglican or whatever. Once that starts happening and people have to literally differentiate themselves from each other, we start to get more and more of these really stark, you need to do this if you're this type, and you need to do that and believe this if you're this type. So that may or may not help. It's
It
one of my
does.
favorite areas
Yeah,
to
that
talk
definitely
about.
does.
So,
And that's why I
uh,
mentioned it, because I know it really colors my perspective. So I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you.
yeah, no worries. I could go on for hours and I will not. Um, so,
Very restrained of yours.
sorry.
Very restrained of you, because I know
I know,
how
right?
much you have
Seriously.
to say.
Good Lord, I got a notebook. Yeah, so I'm thinking of what you're saying about juxtapositions,
Mhm.
and sort of this idea of having like these very silly, um, elements next to these really serious texts. And it kind of made me think, and I'm really jumping the shark here, but I'm thinking about body horror. I love horror novels, absolutely love them. And historical horror is one of my favorites. And it made me think of that, like, what does it say about us today that we are so interested in, um, medieval monsters and medieval horror in general? And is it that juxtaposition of a stereotyped, um, religiosity and femininity and everything that makes body horror, particularly as it applies to women, that it makes us such a good match, and is this in some way playing into why we're so drawn to these kinds of things today when we're seeing an uptick in um, violence against women and political crap and all that kind of nonsense. But I'm just wondering that was a whole lot of mess, but if you want to do what you will with it.
So, yeah, I mean, I think the fascination with people who are almost like you but not quite like you, and I think about like circuses, right? You think about the fascination with the, quote unquote freak shows, but even like modern day circuses, you have people who are bending in ways it's not as like um it's not as strange. Obviously, I'm thinking in terms of like how the folks at the time would have thought of folks. Um, but still it's unusual, right? It's they're contorting in ways that humans can't do. That not humans can do, obviously, but that like most humans can't do. I can't do, right? I can't do. I'm 46 and my magic trick is that I can still touch my toes, right? That's sort of where I am on the bendy scale. But and I think we don't have quote unquote freak shows anymore, right? Now they are movies. So now movies are our freak shows. And so now we have and I am not a horror buff. And so I'm going to draw way back into the past. I don't know modern horror, but if you look at the like Pinhead, right? He's almost human, not human. Michael Myers is human. Is he human? Right? He doesn't look human, right? Like, we have these sort of
Yeah.
Freddy Krueger, humanoid, not human, or the alien from like Aliens, right? Humanoid has a tail, but humanoid. And so I just think that it's the same idea, right? You have these monstrous races on the periphery, and I guess I can't, again, I don't study horror, but if you think about where these monsters live, they're not living in downtown Chicago, right? They're living in the periphery. They're living in the woods or in the scary place or in the
So
desert. Yeah.
yeah, that's actually kind of the next part of what I was going to ask. I swear to God, I'm done after this. I won't bother you anymore.
Okay.
But um, considering the Mappa Mundi and all of that, and thinking about those marginal places, um, do you think that there is an element? And you may have addressed this when I was busy kicking out our spammer, but is there an element of that seems sort of like almost uncanny valley sort of feeling about people in these far-flung regions, right? So, oh, we don't know what goes on in sub-Saharan Africa because I mean, obviously medieval people had a lot more access to the world than we actually, give it credit for. But for a lot of everyday villagers, does this express some kind of anxiety about people in other countries with different, religions and different, I know race wasn't quite as much of a thing, but just different customs.
Yeah, I mean, I really think that it it makes the unknown also unusual and scary, right? It's like we are us and they are them, and we have to differentiate ourselves in some way. And this is where Augustine's question comes in, right? Like Augustine's question is, okay, we know we're human. We know that we are Christians. We know that we have a soul. We know we don't know what's going to happen, but we can hypothesize what's going to happen because we are Christians, right? In whatever way he viewed himself at that time. And so the question is, these monstrous races, he's not saying that they're evil, right? He's not saying that they're bad. They're just different. Are they
Yeah.
so different that they don't have souls? And I didn't read this part, but he talks about the dog-headed people and how they bark. They don't speak, they bark. And for him, that meant that they weren't sentient in the same way humans are. So, like, language was a really important part of, like, do they have souls? And
Right.
so I really think that it wasn't, again, they're not evil. They're not like necessarily
Right.
demons to Augustine. They're just other people who are really weird because they're far away. But
Exactly.
can we get them? Can we get these guys on our team, right? And so yeah, I think it's more just differentiating themselves of like our tribe and their tribe. Can we meet in the middle? You know,
Hmm.
they're humanish.
That's great.
Because I think
Yeah,
isn't
no, that's
Christopher a cynocephaly?
Hmm?
Isn't Christopher a cynocephalus as well? Because that came up in that whole like argument of whether they could be converted or not. Um, and yeah, I think even going back to Isidore, because he sort of refers to animals as like dumb animals, as kind of one of his like defining features. Um, which is where I was trying to like negotiate. Well, what if the animal can understand language, but it can't speak the language? Because there's a horse in one of the Old Norse sagas that can understand the speech of men, but can't like speak. And then there's men who sort of transform into wolves that speak with wolf voices, and it's like so they speak and they know what they're saying. They have language, but just because it's not comprehensible to humans, does that mean that they're human? So yeah, I love these kinds of arguments. I love
this is the
seeing
stuff
where
we
it's
get
like
paid
in
for.
them too.
So I don't know Norse sagas, but Bisclavret, I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
he's still him when he turns into a were like a wolf, right? He's still him, and that's how they figure out that he's like that he was wronged, you know. Um,
Exactly.
yeah, but definitely
Right.
for Augustine, it seemed that I again am not an Augustine scholar, so I'm actually trained as a legal scholar.
Ah,
I read court cases
oh,
for my
wow.
dissertation. But then I got into teaching and things, you shift, you pivot.
Mhm.
And so then I just really kind of got into the marginalia and the stitching and the teaching and that kind of thing. But so I am not an Augustine scholar at all. But yeah, I I think for him it was definitely speaking showed that you had cognition essentially.
Mm.
Mhm. We have
Um,
an
I
excellent
sorry.
Augustine scholar here in Edmonton. I should get him to come on and continue this discussion for another one, right? Talking
But
about who's
Oh my
human
God, yes, please.
and how
Augustine
they're
was
out of
talking in
body.
a sort of a classical
Sorry?
setting. I think Augustine's writing in a very classical setting, a Roman and Greek classical setting. He's not writing in a medieval setting. He gets used by the medieval scholars, but
Yeah, he is kind of on that edge, isn't he? It's
mhm.
like we don't know where
yeah,
to put him.
yeah, but also, therefore, they'll think his perception of whether these people are sentient or not is perhaps not as clouded in the same way. because he's
Yeah,
coming at
so
it from a different background.
yeah, and
Yeah,
I didn't, because this was a medieval talk, I didn't talk about sort of the Greeks and the Romans, but the Greeks and Rome, I mean, all of this
yeah,
stuff comes from the Greeks and Romans. Like the Greeks absolutely believed in all of these different the Ro I'm not going to say that. I don't know about the Greeks. I think they did. But Pliny the Elder
mm,
like talks about
Mm.
these monstrous races. Yeah, so he's absolutely coming from a uh a Roman perspective, and it's not until later that they kind of become scary. So I absolutely agree. Like for him, they were just these people that he needs to sort of figure out. But then it's used later, and it's more much scarier. They're much worse connotation, I guess is what I'm going to say later on. Yeah.
And it reminds
Can I
me
ask you
too
a very
of
quick question?
Lucretius. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, but just to say, do you get the same sort of drawings where people have added little squiggles after the manuscript's been written, produced, used in the what I think of marginalia, the little sort of oh God I'm bored or type squiggles that monks and things put on their manuscripts. Do you get the same sort of drawings there?
Not as detailed.
Mhm.
Um, but you do get like, well, in my experience, so I looked at 14th century archbishop court records from the Archdeaconry of Paris. And I have little doodles of faces kind of like mashed into things. So they're definitely sort of like doodles of like these notaries these scribes as they're like writing out these court cases in the I forget what Wednesday is in Latin, but whatever Wednesday is in Latin, it starts with an M, or Martes, right? It starts with an M, and there'll be like two little like weird faces in the M, or in an O somewhere, in the day of the week, and so it's not as decorative, right? It's not as decorative, but yeah, I mean they're doodling people. Um, the oldest picture of Joan of Arc we have is doodled in the margins. There might be a picture of Marjorie Kemp doodled in the margins, right, of something else. And so it's like they're just doodling. I mean, and sometimes they're really well done because they're done by an artist, and sometimes they're not well done because that's another thing that I try and teach my students, right? Is that just because we have it doesn't mean it's the best. So, just like there are really, really crappy songs on, Spotify, there are also really crappy artwork. So it's like, and sometimes that's what gets put down to us. They're like, oh God, those medieval people are terrible at art. It's like, not necessarily.
One
Um,
day.
so I hate to end this. This has been such a fruitful and awesome discussion. But I know some of us do have to go, but that's a compliment to you, Kristi, that we
Thank
cannot
you.
stop talking or asking questions. This has gone all the way from look at these cool things I do for fun, all the way over to who has a soul and how can we tell? Exactly the kind of stuff that we do here,
Oh, good.
uh, which is to say weird stuff. So thank you so much.
Thank you for
Please,
having me.
please let us know if you ever want to come back and share new designs or talk about anything you found, any interesting little bits and pieces. Or
Yeah,
even
and
if you want to talk,
if anybody wants this teaching thing, hit me
yes.
up. I got you. Or
That's
not.
exactly what I
No
was going to
pressure.
say. If you want to come talk to us about teaching and folding in some of this stuff, obviously we're all teaching at some point, so we'd love to hear it. So yeah, once again, thank you so much, and thank you to everybody who joined us. This will be uploaded on YouTube, so we can see each other's gorgeous faces then, and we can re-listen to anything that we missed, and or see, Kristi's links to her shop. So thank you very much, and we will, yeah, we'll see you another time. I should mention before we go, actually, that our next appearance is going to be at Leeds. We are running 4 sessions at Leeds. So if you're going to be there, please do come and say hello. We would love to meet you, and, talk in person, or even go to your sessions and see what you're up to. We will probably resume more regular programming, shall we say, probably in the fall, because both Francesca and I are defending our dissertations in about 5 minutes. So we'll be a little busy. But in the meantime, keep up with us on our website, bodiesandbeing.com, our YouTube, whatever. And thanks for joining.
Thank you.
See you all. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you, Kristi, for your wonderful talk. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Oh, I love that. Amber. Amber's gone.
Sorry, I had to unmute and I couldn't find it.
No, it's all good. Thanks for coming out. That was fun.
That was super cool.
Yeah, if you like any of these, you can look at our YouTube because we have like lots of different things. But like there was one that I got this lady on Halloween, or not on Halloween, but in October to come talk about executed bodies, and that was fun.
Oh, that would have been awesome.
Yeah, there's lots of really good stuff. Now I got to get Sean to come talk about Augustine and ensoulment and all of that. So anyway, I have to pee or I'm gonna die. So
Same.
all right. Well, thanks for coming out.
Yep, thanks for telling me about it.
No worries. No worries. I'll try to find more like this too, because that was awesome. Okay. All right. Well, I'll see you later. Gotta pee.
All right, bye.
Bye.